A shocking crime turns a couple's world upside down.
She saw blood coming from his ear, and she just started screaming.
Oh, God, help me. Oh, God, help me.
She loved him endlessly. I mean, the sun setting rose with Corey.
You could tell just by being around them that they were in love.
But as the investigation into the crime unfolds, it becomes clear that this seemingly perfect couple harbored some deep and potentially deadly secrets.
We all knew about the other woman, but 6 women?
I was asked if I wanted to make some money.
From our perspective, it was basically just greed and selfishness.
I asked her, was it for business or pleasure?
And her answer was?
She was like, you decide.
On one hand, he was a saint. On the other hand, he was the devil. We didn't know what to believe.
It's still unbelievable, still a shock. I feel like all of this is really still unreal.
July 9th, 2010. It's a warm summer day in Addis, Louisiana, a small community located on the banks of the Mississippi in West Baton Rouge Parish.
It's a suburb of Baton Rouge, upscale, very attractive housing there.
Everyone's connected, and it's very much a neighbor-friendly area, low crime.
But the quiet, crime-free reputation of Addis is about to be tested in an unimaginable way. At approximately 12:45 p.m., 41-year-old mother of 2, Monique Kitts, returns home from work on her lunch break with her 2 children, 18-year-old Dory and 11-year-old Corey Jr.
When we opened the door, we saw glass. There was glass shattered on the floor. And she said the first thing she thought was, I'll be damned. Corey done knocked my vase over.
Corey is Monique's husband of 16 years. After calling out his name, Monique and her children head to the master bedroom.
Corey? Dad, Corey!
When she got to the room, she saw he was in the bed. My mom went to tap his foot, and then I noticed she hurried up and bagged up, and she was saying something's not right. She noticed blood. She just started screaming.
Moments later, 911 dispatchers receive a call from the Kitts residence.
Oh, God, help me. There's blood coming out of his ear.
She's hysterical, she's screaming, she's hollering. The kids are screaming and they're hollering.
I just walked in my door and there was glass everywhere.
Someone broke into your house?
Yes. Somebody must have broken into my, oh my God.
Unsure if the shooter is still on the premises, the operator instructs Monique to lock her bedroom door and remain there with her 2 children. Minutes later, police arrive at the scene.
When we went through the door, guns were drawn. When you hear possible burglary in progress, you got to think, we got an armed suspect there. What are we looking at? Is it more than one? We slowly go through the whole residence. We each took an area. We wanted to make sure nobody was in there. Nothing was found.
Children in the background, just like screaming and hollering. Maybe the person is still in the home or in the bedroom, because someone could still be there.
Police department. When I first laid eyes upon Monique, Dory, and Corey Kitts Jr., they were up against the wall, facing the bed, and were screaming.
It doesn't take long for investigators to realize precisely why Monique and her children are so upset.
I noticed Corey Kitts on the bed, covered with blood. As I approached the body, I saw there was 3 bullet holes in his head.
He was found killed and lying there in a pool of his own blood.
As police begin clearing the crime scene, the Kitts family seems shell-shocked. For Monique and Corey Kitts, it's a horrific ending to what had been a seemingly all-American romance. Born in 1969, Monique Oubry grew up in an upper-middle-class home in Plaquemine, Louisiana.
My mother has 5 children. All of us are spoiled, every last one. As you can probably imagine, Monique was spoiled also.
She was just very well liked, and she got along with everybody.
Monique's bright, vivacious personality made her a beloved classmate by the time she hit high school.
She was always on the go, doing something. Like I said, she was always friendly, so she always had a lot of friends.
After high school, Monique attended McNeese State University in nearby Lake Charles, where she majored in childhood education.
She loves kids. She's always loved kids. She didn't want to teach at school. She wanted daycare.
After college, Monique returned to Plaquemine to start working full-time at a supercenter. While retail wasn't Monique's dream job, the hard-working sales associate met another store employee who would change her life forever. His name was Corey Kitts.
Miss Monique, how are you?
I'm fine, Mr. Corey. How are you?
I'm doing well.
He would always come in the department where she was, clowning around, and they just became friends.
Corey was a nice-looking guy.
Like Monique, Corey grew up in Plaquemine and was also known for his outgoing personality.
He had a big crush on her, and he was always doing sweet little things. He was so charismatic, and his personality and sense of humor actually won her over.
It was like he swept her off her feet.
Pretty soon, Monique and Corey were inseparable.
She loved the ground he walked on. She loved Corey, and Corey loved Monique.
That's how she felt about him. He was her world. You know, he was her heart.
Within a few months, they moved in together. And not long after that, Monique broke some big news to her mother.
I said, okay, what is it? Well, they had started staying together by this time. I'm gonna have a baby. I said, well, when you sleep with a man every night, those things happen.
In November of 1991, Monique gave birth to their daughter, Dory. Soon after, the couple officially tied the knot.
You could tell just by being around them that they were in love.
Monique was very excited when she had Dory. She didn't really want to go back to work. He didn't want her to go back to work. And that's when their daycare business came about.
With Corey's love and support, Monique's dream of running a daycare became a reality. And soon, business was booming.
Within a month, she had so many kids, they didn't have anywhere to put them. She loved them. She was good to them.
Monique's daycare business proved so successful that by 1999, she moved the daycare out of her home and into a new location in Plaquemine. However, that wasn't the only good news she and Corey received that year.
Monique and Corey had a second child, a beautiful son they named Corey Jr.
Not long after the birth of their son, Corey landed a well-paying job at a local chemical plant.
Corey was an operator, really good job, in this area.
He was making good money, maybe $80,000 to $100,000 or more income.
Over the next decade, the happy couple enjoyed the fruits of their hard-earned labor and moved into their dream home in Addis, Louisiana.
She had her income with the daycare and including his, so she was set up pretty good.
I used to always say I wanted her life because to me, she had it all. She had a good husband. She had a nice, big, beautiful house.
But on the afternoon of July 9th, 2010, Corey and Monique's dream life was ripped apart.
Monique goes in and finds her husband dead.
It's still unbelievable to me, still a shock. My daddy's not here.
Corey was always happy-go-lucky. Who would do this? Why would somebody want to kill Corey?
What investigators are about to discover will turn the case upside down and have folks in the quiet little town of Addis questioning everything they thought they knew about this picture-perfect couple.
You start realizing something's not right.
After 16 years of marriage, Monique Kitts and her husband Corey were living the good life in Addis, Louisiana. But at approximately 12:45 p.m. on July 9th, 2010, their life together was turned upside down.
Monique Kitts and her children came back to the house, and they then walked into the bedroom, and that's where they found Corey laying in the bed. Was unresponsive. He had been shot.
As police work to secure the scene and console Monique and her children, word of the shooting reaches their family.
I said, what happened? What happened? Somebody just shot Corey. Said, oh my God.
By the time we got there, it was a circus. Monique was in like a despondent attitude. And when she saw my mom, it was like she just broke down.
With the family sequestered outside the house, investigators begin processing the crime scene.
Mr. Kitts was shot 3 times. It looked like someone had got into the home and shot Mr. Kitts in his sleep.
Next to Corey's body, investigators find 3 spent shell casings.
So what do you got?
340 caliber casings.
Given the condition of the Kitts' home, robbery seems a likely motive.
Rest of the house pretty ransacked. Let's go check it out.
The house had broken glass on the floor near the entrance door. And the furniture in the house, some of it was turned upside down.
It looked like a break-in.
But looks can be deceiving, especially once investigators conduct a more thorough search of the premises.
It didn't take long to figure that there's no signs of forced entry, so now we got a problem.
Nothing was stolen. They had money, they had a weapon, they had computers, they had flat-screen TV, a number of things that were never touched. It appeared to be very much a staged scene. The point of it was not to commit a robbery, but to go ahead and kill a man.
But why Corey Kitts? That afternoon, investigators begin questioning Corey's grieving spouse, Monique.
Monique was upset, visibly upset.
When I interviewed her the first time, I was asking her questions about, particularly that day, what was going on.
According to Monique, her husband had worked the previous evening.
He came in 5:15.
In the morning?
He went home and took a shower. Monique says that they talked, they clowned a little bit.
She then left to meet Corey's sister.
I got up to go walking. Came back, he was still woke. I told him I had walked 3 miles. He laughed at me.
And then what happened?
I went to work.
Monique says that shortly after noon, she left work and took her children home so they could all have lunch together at the house. That's when they discovered Corey in a pool of blood on the bed.
Anytime.
And he didn't move. I didn't know what was wrong. And then that's when I saw the blood. And I just screamed.
Monique's daughter, Dory, confirms her mother's account.
Did your mama come back home? Were you aware if she came back home, or do you know where she was at the time?
Work.
As for Dory, she claims she left their home around 8:40 that morning.
Left and I walked downstairs and his door was closed, so I figured he must still be asleep because he had just got off, so I didn't mess with him.
Dory worked at the daycare during the summer. She went to work. My mother had Corey Jr., so she brought Corey to the daycare. That's why the 3 of them went home to lunch together, and that's when they found Corey.
It was crazy. Like, it was really just a surreal moment. They asked, how was my mom and dad's relationship? How was our relationship?
Dory is adamant that neither she nor her mother had anything to do with her dad's death. But she believes she might know someone who did.
On June the 9th, 1 month before their homicide, Corey Kitts comes home and he sees a red car backed up across the street from his home.
I just feel like somebody's watching.
Could the unidentified driver of this car be the same individual who murdered Corey in cold blood? Investigators are about to discover a half-dozen reasons why that might just be true, each one more tawdry and tantalizing than the next.
This is not going to be a typical case. I was absolutely shocked at the content of it.
We all knew about the other woman, but 6 women?
Just hours after the shooting death of 40-year-old Corey Kitts,
Maybe a month or so
police in Addis,
before
Louisiana
the
have learned
murder.
a startling piece of information from Corey's daughter.
Maybe a month or so before the murder of Corey Kitts, he had saw a red car that was kind of suspicious that was around the neighborhood.
I just feel like somebody's watching.
Investigators wonder, had Corey simply been paranoid? Or could this theory have legs? When police interview one of the Kitts' neighbors, Sean Monroe, they get a possible answer.
The neighbor said a silver truck was backed in the driveway.
Probably a little bit after 7:30 or something. I went outside. I saw like a metallic silver vehicle that was bagged up behind Corey's truck. It wasn't that long, but it was there.
While that vehicle description did not match the Corey one given by Dory on the morning of it did indicate that someone, or possibly multiple people, paid Corey a visit on the morning of the murder.
And because the kid's home showed no signs of a break-in, investigators think whoever killed Corey had access to the home.
Who
If
besides...
she didn't have forced entry, then somebody had a key, or somebody let him in.
The question now is, who besides Monique and her daughter had access to the home?
To answer that question, detectives take a deeper look at Corey's personal life.
We're in a small town. Everybody knows everybody's business.
We just kept getting a lot of feedback, things that you have. Corey was having some affairs, and we know that that's one of the things that you have. Hey, could very well be one of those people.
In order to confirm the allegations of infidelity, detectives reach out to the friends and relatives of the kid's family.
First of all, we heard rumors that Corey wasn't that faithful of a husband.
For years. And then it must have gotten where Monique chose not to believe it. For years. And then it must have gotten where it was other people that she really trusts, that came to her and told her, this is what's going on. I said, well, you can do one of two things. You can stay there and put up with it, or you can pick up your bags and walk out the door. She said, well, I don't want to go anywhere. I want to make my marriage work.
But Monique's mother says the harder her daughter worked to save her marriage, the more difficult it became.
We discovered that he was having 5 or 6 affairs.
We all knew about the other woman, but 6 women?
The revelation that Corey was carrying on not 1, but 6 affairs at the time of his death opens up a Pandora's box of possible killers.
All these women were potential suspects because it could have been one of them
where
was
were
mad
they?
because
Do they know anything
they might
about
have
what's
found
going
out about
on?
another one.
So now, guess what? You need to go figure out, where were they? Do they know anything about what's going on? What was the relationship about?
Over the next 2 months, detectives identify all 6 of Corey's lovers and bring them in for questioning. They start with Corey's co-worker, Janice Thompson, who's allegedly been sleeping with Corey for 10 years.
Yes, we have.
So you and Corey were having a thing?
Yes, we had a fling. But at the end of the day, we both always went home to our families. I never hurt Corey.
Janice Thompson swears to detectives that she's innocent and was at work at the time of the murder.
But even with Janice
Given
Thompson,
her cooperation, it appears that she is telling the truth.
But even with Janice Thompson eliminated as a suspect, there are 5 more of Corey's paramours investigators need to question.
Of course, the people that he may have had affairs with were viable suspects. Every one of them was looked into. It was determined that they had nothing to do with this murder. He did have extramarital affairs, but as a whole, nothing to indicate that they wanted murdered.
But if these 6 women weren't involved, then who was?
Police seized Corey's telephone records. Really, the records of the entire family. They did this in order to figure out any connections they may have overlooked.
It's that search of Corey and Monique's cell phone records that reveals something truly unexpected and explosive.
Once Monique's cell phone records were analyzed, it was apparent that Corey Kitts was not the only man in her life.
Addis, Louisiana, the slaying of 40-year-old and local investigators' home 2 months prior has residents in Addis, Louisiana on edge, and local investigators scrambling for answers.
The investigation revealed that Corey was actively having relationships with 6 different women.
Through the cell records, we were able to determine that they were not anywhere in the vicinity of the time of the homicide.
But when police expand their phone record search to include Corey and his immediate family, 2 calls jump out at them.
Something's really weird in the phone records of Monique.
On the day of the homicide, Monique Kitts was talking with Carl Michael and David Ray Johnson.
Who were Carl Michael and David Ray Johnson? And what was their connection to Monique?
She
To answer
met
that
a young
question,
man who
investigators
delivered milk to
again
the
circle back to Corey and Monique's extended family.
She met a young man who delivered milk to the daycare. His name was David Johnson.
He came to the daycare. We had about 4 or 5 different milkmen, and he was the friendliest. He was the most helpful.
Hello, how are you? I got your milk for you. You doing all right today?
Those close to Monique suspected that the handsome and charming David Ray Johnson might have been delivering her
his
more
ability
than just fresh milk.
He definitely came off as someone who was very confident about his ability to get women. You know, maybe he was a charmer.
I'll call you later.
Oh, okay.
Good to see you.
Okay. I asked her one day, is something going on between you and David? Oh my God. That was her favorite word. Oh my God, Mama. Why would you ask me something like that? I said, I have my reasons.
For investigators, rumors of an affair between Monique and
This
David
woman's
Johnson
man, I could see
are
him
reason
thinking
enough to
that
haul the
since she wasn't gonna
handsome
leave her husband-
milkman in for questioning.
David Ray Johnson being this woman's man, I could see him thinking that since she wasn't gonna leave her husband, and he had this affair, it would seem to me he certainly had a motive.
Under questioning, David says he first met Monique in 2006.
She was the owner. She was the one who paid me. I met her like that.
David says he and Monique maintained a strictly professional relationship. That is until a few months later, when Monique approached him after one of his deliveries.
And our answer was?
And we kind of exchanged like numbers, and I asked her, was it for business or pleasure?
And our answer was?
And she was like, you decide.
I believe that's what she was longing for at the time, and that moved into a sexual relationship.
She rented and leased an apartment for him so he'd have somewhere to stay, and allegedly so they would have some place to meet up and carry on their affair.
She was texting, she was calling, she paid bills for David Ray Johnson during the course of their relationship, gave him money.
She was having an affair with him, but she was helping him out, and she had the financial means to do so.
I could see him thinking that if Corey was out of the way, he could get more out of her. He had a motive.
But according to David Johnson, that simply wasn't the
a few
case.
months before. David also claimed he was delivered the morning of the shooting, but claimed they had stopped seeing each other a few months before. He also claimed he was delivering milk the morning of the shooting.
When did you find out that Corey Kitts was dead?
When I ended my route.
We knew David could not have possibly murdered Corey. We know where he was the entire time of the homicide.
And while police decide to keep David Johnson on their radar, they shift their focus to the other man Monique appears to have called the morning of the murder, a man named Carl Michael Howard.
The interesting thing here is that Monique didn't just call Carl Howard once or twice. In fact, they exchanged over 700 telephone calls in the months leading up to the day of the murder.
David Ray Johnson and Carl Michael Howard were best friends. Monique had been doing David introduced the two of them, and Carl Michael needed someone to do his taxes for him. And David introduced the two of them.
Like David and Monique, Carl hailed from Baton Rouge, though he now called Atlanta, Georgia home.
He was a technician at a cell phone company.
Carl Howard worked for Verizon. He had an engineering degree in cell technology.
They became very good friends over the years. Liked to crack jokes. He was just loved to also talk. A fun-loving person, very humorous, liked to crack jokes, loved to talk.
Was Monique carrying on an affair with Carl Michael Howard as well as David Johnson? Monique's family doesn't think so, and they are convinced Carl is not violent.
And if you be around him and you talk to him, he is so nice. He reminds you of a big teddy bear. I don't think he has a mean bone in his body.
Investigators spot, while Monique's family doesn't believe Carl had anything to do with Corey's death, investigators spot a red flag.
Carl Howard made 4 trips to Louisiana from Atlanta, which we were able to track. He comes in April, then the very end of March, the 1st of April. He comes in June, he comes in July.
In fact, phone records indicate Carl Michael Howard was in Baton Rouge on the day of the murder.
Every time he would come, he would contact David Ray Johnson. He would contact Monique on every one of these trips.
So they decide to bring Carl in for questioning, and they get right to the point.
Did y'all have any kind of intimate affair, you and her? Shoot me straight, man. You know, if you did, you did.
Was that your little buddy?
Not at all. Did you speak with Monique the day of the murder?
Yeah, early that morning.
What did y'all talk
was
about?
with his sister.
Nothing to do.
David went to her house that morning.
We know he was in
and
Baton Rouge.
He did not deny that, but he said he was with his sister. David went to her house that morning, and he was out with her that whole day shopping for cakes for the birthday party for her daughter.
Detectives intend to check out Carl's story.
On June the 9th,
but before they
month
release
before
him,
the
they learn
homicide.
something else.
Carl Howard's vehicle was a red car. On June the 9th, 1 month before their homicide, Corey Kitts comes home and he sees a red car backed up across the street from his home.
But perhaps the biggest red flag surrounding Carl Howard was the other phone call he made
And
the day of the shooting.
later with Monique Kitts was talking with Carl and David Ray Johnson. There was then conversation later with Corey Knox and Carl Howard. Corey Knox was more of a person that we would call a career criminal.
Who had been in trouble with the police on several occasions, known to sell drugs, known to carry guns.
It was just too much of a coincidence. It just seemed very suspicious.
But
Do they know
detectives
one
still
another?
aren't
What
sure
is the
how
extent
all
of
these
their
pieces fit together.
How are these people connected? How do they know one another? What is the extent of their relationship?
This is where you start to see, from the outside looking in, that there was this plot.
You said y'all wasn't perfect. What was the biggest discussions about?
Money.
Marital affairs of both Corey and his wife. The investigation into the murder of 40-year-old Corey Kitts has unearthed a string of extramarital affairs of both Corey and his wife, Monique. It's also led police to focus their investigation on two men, Monique's friend, Carl Michael Howard, and an ex-con named Corey Knox.
Corey Knox had had many scrapes with the police before.
But while Corey's criminal past is illuminating, so too are his and Carl Michael Howard's phone records.
On the morning of the murder, Carl called David Johnson and Monique, which wasn't unusual. But then there were a series of calls between Carl Howard and Corey Knox, leading right up to the murder.
It was determined on the morning of the murder that Carl's cell phone pinged several times off of a cell tower near Corey Knox's home in North Baton Rouge. They just go completely silent.
But in the hours after that flurry of calls, both Carl Howard and Corey Knox's cell phones went suspiciously cold.
Their phones aren't pinging off of any towers. They just go completely silent.
Their phone is blacked out. And then what's going on during that period? There's a murder.
That's just too much.
But when
of a
investigators speak
coincidence.
to Carl's sister, despite detective suspicions, there's still the question of Carl Howard's alibi.
He stated that he hadn't been with family the whole day.
But when investigators speak to Carl's sister, she tells them a different story.
She told us, I don't lie. She said, and I'm not going to lie for anyone and get myself in trouble. He was not with me. He did not go with me that morning.
His phone
She said the only time I saw him was that evening.
So you were out birthday shopping with your brother?
No, not with him.
So you didn't see him at all that day?
Between his phony alibi, his phone records, and the fact that Carl's car was seen at the Kitts' residence 1 month prior to the date of the murder, it looks like Carl killed Corey Kitts with the help
For
of
and
Corey
on the day
Knox.
of the homicide.
Still, investigators need to determine if the two other people Carl spoke with the morning of the murder might be involved.
We found numerous contacts the day before and on the day of the homicide. Numerous calls made by Carl Howard, by David Ray Johnson, and with Monique.
Of particular interest to detectives are the multiple calls and texts Monique made in the hours leading up to her husband's murder.
on her way to work
Nearly
to a
all of
daycare.
them to David Johnson and Carl Howard.
She stays on that phone for approximately 19, 20 minutes, all the way while she's driving to Plaquemine from Addis on her way to work to a daycare. She arrives at a daycare about 8:05 in the morning. She hangs up the phone,
And
I
then
think, with David
everything
Ray
stops
Johnson, and she's
after
still
the
on
murder.
that phone with Carl Howard for another 4 minutes.
All that morning, you got talk between them. You got her talking with Carl Howard, with David Ray, and then everything stops after the murder.
On October 14th, 2010, roughly 3 months after her husband was murdered, Monique Kitts is questioned for a second time.
Calls in one day.
Investigators
one
asked
morning.
Monique to describe her relationship with Carl Howard and how often they spoke on the phone.
Occasionally. Every now and then, maybe.
How can you have 60-something calls in one day, one morning? That ain't limited contact. That's a lot of contact.
Honey.
In the last 6 months, are you involved with any other personal role?
You talked to him a lot.
The volume of calls and texts between Monique and Carl Howard isn't
That
detectives'
she was, in
only
fact,
point
in a
of
recent
contention.
relationship with David.
In the last 6 months, are you involved with any other personal relationships that may come out?
Nothing. Detectives knew that was a lie, that she was, in fact, in a recent relationship with David Johnson.
Do you have any information about why your husband was killed or who did it that you have not told us?
He does have an alibi. Police were looking for some...
While detectives think there's more to the story than Monique is letting on, without further evidence linking her to the crime, they have no choice but to release her.
Monique does have an alibi. Police were looking for something more than just a string of cell phone records in order to connect her with the murder of her husband.
Looking into their financial records, investigators determined the Kitts were barely keeping their heads above water, Monique in particular.
She didn't have any money. Everybody thought her business was doing well.
File bankruptcy.
You know, she was spending a lot of money. She was giving a lot of money to David, her boyfriend.
In fact, the excess spending had driven the couple to the brink of financial ruin.
Corey wanted to file bankruptcy, and they initiated the bankruptcy.
As police dig deeper into Corey and Monique's finances, they stumble
Monique
on
was the
what they think
beneficiary
might
of this
be the real
policy.
motive for the murder.
Basically, what it boiled down to was life insurance.
There was a large insurance policy he had on himself that was more than $500,000.
Monique was the beneficiary of this policy, so if Corey were to die, it would kill three
Monique
birds
was
with
gonna
one
get the
stone.
insurance
It would put an
money
end to
and-
financial problems, it would put an end to his cheating ways, and it would allow her to be with the man of her dreams, David Johnson.
There was this conspiracy in that Monique was going to get the insurance money.
Dr. Carl Howard, he didn't know anything
and
about
Carl Michael Howard
On
went
March
in
5th.
and actually did the shooting.
There was just one problem with that theory.
They talked to David Johnson, he didn't know anything about it. They talked to Corey Knox, he didn't know anything about it. They talked to Carl Michael Howard, he didn't know anything about it.
On March 5th,
Sufficient evidence, then the case is
2013,
thrown out.
nearly two
If
and a
the
half
grand jury
years
said-
after Corey Kitts was murdered, prosecutors in West Baton Rouge Parish present their findings to a grand jury.
If the grand jury says there isn't sufficient evidence, then the case is thrown out. If the grand jury says there is sufficient evidence, then charges will be filed against Monique,
Next day,
David Johnson,
at 9
Carl
o'clock when they were going to
Howard,
meet,
and Corey
is when
Knox.
David.
But the night before the grand jury is set to present their findings, there's a stunning development.
We talking midnight before the next day, at 9 o'clock when they were going to meet, is when David Johnson comes in with a lawyer and basically says they did it because they admitted it to me.
According to David, months after he and Monique began their affair, she began complaining about her husband on a regular basis.
I remember her joking about it like I wish he
To
was dead.
kill
Like she started joking,
her husband.
saying it a lot.
According to him.
David says he didn't take Monique seriously until one day in 2007.
Monique actually gave David Ray Johnson money to kill her husband.
According to him, he got money from her, maybe $1,000, $2,000.
Once she gave you the 2,000, what did you do with it?
To the point where he
He
says,
just
well,
kind of
maybe
took
I
the
do
money.
have
He
someone,
admits
you know.
he took the money and kind of didn't do anything. He wanted the money.
David has apparently no intention of trying to kill him, but as Monique applies more pressure over time, David Ray Johnson comes to the point where he says, well, maybe I do have someone, you know, and introduces her to Carl.
There's no doubt in your mind that she wanted her husband dead, is that fair? Yeah.
According to David, Carl told him the hit on Corey wouldn't come cheap. Ultimately, he and Monique agreed on a price.
Drive him from North Baton.
You know where that money was supposed to come from?
From the insurance.
Carl Michael supposedly got Corey Knox, his long-term friend, to drive him from North Baton Rouge to the town of Addis where the Kitts lived.
Carl
He knew
then
nothing
walked
about the
inside
murder
and
until he saw it
shot
on the news.
Corey Kitts
We had no-
as he was sleeping in the bed. And then they left.
David pretty much laid it out for the state. But despite his role of introducing Carl to Monique, he claimed he knew nothing
Evidence
about
to
the
show
murder
that he
until
was
saw it
involved in
on the
any
news.
further. We had no evidence that he was actually involved in the murder. He may have in the beginning, but he never acted on that. And from that point on, we had no evidence to show that he was involved in any further conspiracy
2013,
to have Corey
the trio
killed.
was formally
Although
indicted.
David Johnson isn't charged, prosecutors waste no time throwing the book at Monique, Carl Michael Howard, and Corey Knox.
On March 14th, 2013, the trio was formally indicted for Corey Kitts' murder.
I knew when they came back in and they started reading, I knew what they were going to say. And I started screaming, "Not my child. God, not my child." I was just numb because I knew I had to have been dreaming. This
family members that are now enemies that don't speak.
I was just so hurt and shocked.
As the case heads to trial, it begins to drive a wedge between Corey and Monique's families.
It was so emotional. You had family members that are now enemies that don't speak. The tension was very thick.
Authorities in West Baton Rouge Parish had made a Nearly 3 years after Corey Kitts was shot dead in his home, authorities in West Baton Rouge Parish had made a trio of arrests in connection with this vicious crime.
Police arrested Corey's
October
wife,
20th,
Monique,
2014,
and 2 other men,
in the
Carl
midst of
Howard and Corey Knox. A 4th man, David Johnson, Monique's former lover, was never charged with a crime.
Knox's attorney came to us
a year and a half
said,
later, on October
"We have some
20th, 2014, in the midst of jury selection for the trial of Monique and her co-conspirators, one more domino falls.
Corey Knox's attorney
Says that
came
Carl
to
Howard
us and
contacted
said,
him about a month
"We
before
have
the
some
crime."
information we would like to share with you."
Corey Knox and his attorney were looking to cut a deal with prosecutors.
When Corey and his attorney sit down with the prosecutors, he says that Carl Howard contacted him about a month before the crime.
Well, I get a phone call.
Background.
And
I think that's what Corey Knox was more of a person that was what you would call a career criminal as far as drugs and crime. He had that background, and I think that's what really got him.
Corey claims he was interested in Carl's offer, until his old friend laid out the details.
When he told me,
the murder.
Somebody wanted somebody dead, I was like, hell no.
According to Corey, he never agreed to murder anyone, but he admits he did agree to something else the night before the murder.
He asked me if I could get somebody a vehicle because
which matched the description of the vehicle.
So Corey agrees to borrow his mother's car, and the next morning they meet at a fast food restaurant. Corey claims they drove to a house in West Baton Rouge.
That car was a silver Dodge Durango, which matched the description of the vehicle seen in front of the Kitts' home on the day of the murder.
Corey Knox said that they turned off their cell phones, which corroborated our cell phone records because we have a period of time where there's no cell activity whatsoever. Corey Knox said Carl Howard
Corey
walks
says
out,
after
has like
they
a bank
arrived at the
envelope.
Kitts residence, Carl Howard exited the vehicle and entered the home through the back door. A few minutes later, he returned.
Corey Knox said Carl Howard walks out, has like a bank envelope of $100 bills,
Corey
takes
Knox
a few
didn't
off,
really have a
hands
dog
it
in
to
the hunt.
Corey,
He's just a dog.
and then he leaves.
Despite the dubious timing of Corey Knox's statement, ultimately prosecutors choose to accept it at face value.
Corey Knox didn't really have a dog in the hunt. He's just a dumb friend.
The prosecution offered Corey Knox accessory after the fact in exchange for his testimony, which when you take into account his time served, he would go free after the
And
trial.
Carl Howard
Following this
had
11th
Corey
hour
killed
deal,
for the money.
Monique Kitts and Carl Howard's trial gets underway on October 27th, 2014.
The state's position was that Monique Kitts and Carl Howard had Corey killed for the money. It
But
was
defense
basically
attorneys strongly
just
disagree
greed
with
and selfishness on their part.
And thanks to the testimony of Corey Knox and Monique's ex-lover, David Johnson, the prosecutors believed they had 2 people that could link them to the crime.
But
You
defense
have
attorneys strongly
only
disagree
statement-
with the state's version of events, as well as the testimony of their so-called star witnesses.
You've got a case without corroboration. You have no eyewitnesses. And you have only statements of convicted felons, people known to be
6
criminals,
of the women.
admitted liars,
But as far
deceivers.
as
The defense also raises the issue of Corey Kitts' infidelity and his long list of lovers.
the police said they cleared all 6 of the women. But as far as any of these women's husbands, boyfriends, who would have been offended by this affair, nothing was done to my knowledge to clear any of those people.
It is under this cloud of tabloid-style revelations that both sides rest their case. As the jury retires to deliberate, nobody is sure which way the case will go.
The process was probably 6 hours when the jury would return the verdict.
Monique Kitts, she was charged with principal to second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit second-degree murder. Same with Carl Howard. The jury came back unanimously guilty on all charges.
Both defendants were sentenced to life.
For the investigators who spent over 4 long years on this case, for Monique and her verdict feels like vindication.
You can absolutely look at Monique Kitts and with a clean conscience say she's the mastermind. I mean, there is no murder of Corey Kitts without Monique.
But for Monique and her supporters, the verdict is nearly impossible to fathom.
Total shock. Couldn't move, couldn't talk, couldn't do nothing. Just total shock.
My mother did not mastermind. My mother did not do anything, have anything to do with the murder of my father.
While both sides remain as steadfast today as they did in 2014, there's no denying who paid the ultimate price in this story of betrayal, lovers, and lies.
Corey Kitts did not deserve to die. Plain and simple.
Humans are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous, nonsensical reasons you can possibly imagine. They construct elaborate fantasies to justify their own malevolence, believing they can outsmart the world and outrun the truth. But I tell you, they never do. Murder is an intimate act, a chaotic intersection of greed, rage, and profound cowardice. And when the dust settles, the truth always leaves a stain, no matter how hard they try to scrub it away. Let us look at Taos, New Mexico, in the summer of 2025, a beautiful, rugged landscape, a place where secrets can easily be buried in the high desert terrain. But secrets have a way of clawing their way back to the surface. Our victim is Melissa Casillas, a woman working diligently at the Los Alamos National Laboratory. By all accounts, Melissa was a deeply devoted mother, a woman who carried the crushing weight of the world on her shoulders, so her daughter, Sierra, would not have to. Sierra had survived a horrific car crash in 2022, an accident that claimed the life of her best friend. Melissa became her anchor, her protector, nursing her physical and emotional wounds. That is what a good mother does. She had plans to move to Albuquerque to help her 18-year-old daughter start beauty school. Melissa was looking toward the horizon. She was looking toward a new beginning. But someone else was looking at her, watching the walls close in. Enter Mark Casillas, the husband, a superintendent at the laboratory, a hunter, a professional outfitter who guides clients through the backcountry. My. When a man tells you he makes his living stalking prey and reading the land, you need to pay very close attention. He is telling you exactly how his mind operates. To a man like that, the world is divided entirely into predators and victims. And Mark, by his own inflated design, was always the predator. On the morning of Thursday, June 26, the illusion of their functional marriage shattered completely. They commute together over an hour each way. Mark claims he was dropped off at 6:15 in the morning, and that Melissa drove all the way back home because she forgot her security badge. Sierra wakes up at 7:45 and finds her mother there. This is unprecedented. Melissa later brings Sierra lunch just before 1 o'clock in the afternoon and sends a text message at 33 minutes past 1 telling Mark to find his own ride home. By 2 o'clock, her supervisor calls Mark. Melissa never showed up to work. By 3:30, Sierra is standing in an eerily empty house. Let us evaluate the scene left behind. The family car is sitting right there in the driveway. The highly protective dogs are outside. Melissa is gone, but her absolute essentials are scattered across the house. Her work phone, her security badge, her keys, a gold chain she wore every single day. And then we find the absolute crown jewel of criminal stupidity. Both of her personal cell phones, the old one and the brand new replacement, are sitting in her office. Wiped clean, factory reset. You have to be kidding me. A mother who is supposedly running away from a stressful life does not meticulously erase her digital footprint to the welcome screen and then leave the physical devices behind. A mother takes her phone. She stays in contact with a daughter she loves more than life itself. A wiped phone left at a crime scene is not the signature of a runaway wife. It is a frantic, panicked erasure of a perpetrator trying to hide location data, desperate text messages, and a history of silent abuse. But Mark desperately wants everyone to believe she just walked away. He notes that her toothbrush, her reading glasses, her sunglasses, and a 90-day supply of thyroid medication are missing. This is staging, and it is insulting in its sheer amateurism. A man trying to construct a narrative of a voluntary disappearance grabs the things he associates with a packed suitcase. He conveniently forgets that a woman actually starting a new life needs money, her identification, her vehicle, and her primary means of communication. When Mark arrives home, he immediately claims to spot unfamiliar tire tracks in the driveway, suggesting a Jeep. He is planting seeds. He wants the police to look outward, look at the phantom driver, look at Diego Martinez. The troubled ex-boyfriend with a history of violence and a restraining order from 2024. Look anywhere but at the husband. But I have interrogated liars for decades, and I tell you, when a husband tries this hard to direct the spotlight away from himself, he is usually the one standing in the dark, holding the bloody match. Consider the witness, Lloyd. He calls in a tip. He saw a woman matching Melissa's description stumbling along Highway 518 that very afternoon, near an old blue truck. If your wife is missing and a lifelong acquaintance says he saw her wandering the road, possibly hurt, you drop everything. You run to that highway. You search every inch of asphalt and dirt with your bare hands. But what does Mark do? He immediately shuts it down. He tells the police it could not be her because she was not wearing a white sweater, and she does not walk with a limp. He dismisses a viable lead with zero hesitation. Why? Because a man who knows his wife is already gone has no interest in chasing ghosts. He knows she is not on that highway, so he views the tip as a nuisance, a dangerous distraction from a narrative he is frantically trying to control. The police, to their immense credit, begin to look much closer. Agent Ezekiel Esquivel-Mata and his team walk through the house. They spot Mark's hunting boots near a fish tank. The mud on them is fresh. Mark, feeling the heat, claims he has not worn them in ages. He literally points to a spiderweb inside the boot as definitive proof, but the police look and there is no spiderweb. There is only the desperate, transparent lie of a cornered narcissist. Criminals always think they are the smartest person in the room. They never are. And right beside those muddy boots, a single, dry drop of what tests positive for blood. Mark denies it, becomes highly agitated, and suddenly decides he wants a lawyer. The grand facade finally cracks. Mark's physical alibi at the laboratory appears solid. He was at work. He got a ride home. He could not have physically abducted her from the house during those afternoon hours. But murder is not always a crime of immediate physical presence. It can be orchestrated. It can be contracted. Or the entire timeline he presented is a complete fabrication built on coerced text messages and delayed discoveries. The inner workings of this tragedy are deeply tangled in the financial wreckage Mark tries to pin entirely on Melissa. He claims their accounts were grossly overdrawn, their security clearances suspended, their wages ruthlessly garnished. He paints her as a woman collapsing under mountains of debt, intercepting legal documents, ruining their lives in secret. But the financial records show the lawsuits were mostly against him alone. He was a heavy anchor dragging them into the abyss, and he hated her for witnessing his failure. Look at the quiet, devastating psychology of the victim. Melissa was trapped in an emotionally and financially abusive dynamic with a highly controlling man. She was quietly preparing to leave. That apartment in Albuquerque was not just for Sierra. It was a desperate escape hatch for Melissa. Mark felt his absolute control slipping through his fingers. To a man driven by ego, a man who views his family as his personal territory, losing control is a fate far worse than death. If she left, she would expose his financial ruins, his abuse, his incredibly hollow image. He could not allow that. He admitted to police he told her to just move out, proudly claiming everything they owned was his. And then, the most chilling detail of all, 3 days after she vanishes, with her keys still sitting untouched on the kitchen table, Mark changes the locks on the house. You change the locks to keep someone out. You do not change the locks if you are praying every night for your beloved wife to return safely. Melissa Casillas did not walk away from her life. She did not abandon the daughter who needed her. She was the victim of a man who viewed her not as a partner, but as property to be discarded when it no longer served his grand illusion. Her silent suffering, the agonizing years of bearing the brunt of his failures, ended in a sudden violent erasure. The tragedy is profound and infuriating. A devoted mother, standing on the very verge of a beautiful new beginning, was silenced by the one person who originally vowed to protect her. The physical evidence might be sparse right now, the body still hidden out there in the vast New Mexico landscape, but the behavioral evidence is screaming the truth at the top of its lungs. We know exactly what happened here. And eventually, the suffocating silence of that empty, locked house will deafen the man who created it. Humans are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine. But sometimes they kill not out of reason, but out of a dark, empty void where a human soul ought to be. I look at the case of Brittany McGlone, and I see a tragedy that defies all human decency. 19 years of age. A young woman who worked the overnight shift at a distribution center and pulled double duty at a local discount store, all to save up for nursing school. She wanted to heal people. She had a future, a bright one, but she made one fatal deviation from her routine on the 4th of May, 2007. Instead of going straight home to her bed after an exhausting night shift, she went to the house of her boyfriend, Jeff Stogner, in the small town of Winsboro, Texas, a town where everybody knows everybody and secrets have a way of poisoning the groundwater. She went to get some rest before Jeff and his stepfather left to pick up a relative. They let her sleep. By the time the afternoon rolled around, her mother Patricia knew something was wrong. Mothers always know. I tell you, a mother's intuition is a more finely tuned instrument than any piece of forensic equipment in my laboratory. When Jeff returned to his home at 3:30 in the afternoon, he found Brittany. She was dead in his bed. It was a brutal, cowardly attack. She had been bludgeoned repeatedly with a heavy object in her sleep. The perpetrator took her dignity, stripping her of her clothing, taking her underwear as some sort of sick trophy, and leaving a scene of pure devastation. But here is the detail that makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. After committing this horrific act of violence, the killer walked down the hall and took a shower in the family bathroom. My, you've just snuffed out the life of a vibrant young woman. And you have the absolute audacity to wash your sins down the drain of the very house you violated. That level of composure tells me we are dealing with a cold, calculated predator who feels completely comfortable in that environment. Initially, the suspect list looked like a tangled web of small-town drama. You have the boyfriend, Jeff. In my line of work, the husband or the boyfriend is always suspect number one. But his alibi was locked down tight, corroborated by his stepfather and surveillance cameras at a convenience store hours away. He passed the polygraph examination. Then you have the grandfather, a man carrying a dark, disgusting secret of abuse toward Brittany. A phenomenal motive to silence her, but his time cards at work proved he was nowhere near the scene. You eliminate the noise, and what are you left with? You are left with a ghost. A man named Chad Carr, 25 years of age, dating Jeff's teenage sister. Let me pause right there. When a grown man of 25 is hovering around a high school girl, you already know his moral compass is fundamentally shattered. Chad visited that house at 8:30 in the morning. He knew Brittany was inside, alone and asleep. When my detectives look at his timeline for that day, it is a masterpiece of over-explanation. He claims he went home to change clothes because it was too hot. You have to be kidding me. It was May in Texas, with temperatures in the mild 60s. You did not change your clothes because of the weather, my friend. You changed them because they were covered in the visual evidence of your unspeakable crime. There's a missing hour in his day, between 9:21 and 10:20 in the morning, an hour where he arrived late to an eye doctor appointment, blaming phantom car trouble. In that single hour, a monster had enough time to drive the house, extinguish a life, clean his body, and walk away. And when you pull back the curtain on Chad's past, the shadows grow even darker. Years prior, in 2001, he assaulted a woman named Debbie, striking her in the head with a heavy metal jack handle to silence her about an affair. The exact same kind of blunt force trauma weapon that likely ended Brittany's life. He is a man who resorts to lethal force the moment his fragile control is threatened. When confronted by authorities about the genetic material they might find, Chad made a statement that echoes in the ears of any seasoned investigator. He said his genetic profile would not be on that girl or in that room. An innocent person simply says they did not do it. A guilty person brags about the efficiency of their cleanup. Furthermore, his teenage girlfriend later reported smelling her own specific brand of body wash on his skin that afternoon, a soap he had no innocent reason to be using since he claimed he never stepped foot in that house. It is a puzzle where the pieces fit together with a sickening perfection. Yet, when the gears of justice finally turned and an arrest was made in 2022, a grand jury returned a no bill, no trial, no reckoning. Sometimes the legal system is a well-oiled machine, and sometimes is a rusty trap that lets the rats slip through. It is an infuriating reality that a man can walk the streets breathing the free air he stole from a hard-working 19-year-old girl. But homicide detectives have very long memories. We do not forget the innocent, and we certainly do not forget the guilty. We sit in the dark, sifting through the lies, waiting for that one microscopic mistake. Brittany McGlone deserved to wear a nurse's uniform. She deserved a long, beautiful life. Instead, her family is left staring at an empty chair, waiting for a locked door to finally open. But mark my words, the truth is patient, and eventually, the devil always collects his due. Humans are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine. Sometimes they take a life out of burning hatred or blinding jealousy. But more often than not, the motive is far more pathetic. They kill out of sheer convenience or greed over a few worthless possessions. They operate in the shadows, preying on those who are trying to step into the light. And when they think they have gotten away with it, they sleep soundly. I tell you, there is nothing more chilling than the apathy of a killer, except perhaps the apathy of the people sworn to bring them to justice. Let's talk about Spencer Irwin, 30 years old, a young man who was fighting a war inside his own mind. Alcohol is a patient predator. It waits for a moment of weakness, a moment of stress, and it sinks its claws in. Spencer knew this enemy well. He was in a period of recurrence, struggling to keep his head above water. But here's the thing you need to understand about Spencer. He was not a man who let his own pain turn him bitter. He was a student. He had a girlfriend. He had a mother who loved him fiercely. And despite his own heavy burdens, he made it his mission to help others. He would walk through the streets, look at the forgotten, unhoused people of the city, and see human beings. He offered them food. He offered them clothing. He offered them hope. He was a man holding a flashlight in the dark for others to see the way. And for his trouble, he ended up dead in the dirt. August 1st, 2024, just before 11 in the morning, a desolate loading dock tucked behind a business in Fresno, California. It is a bleak piece of asphalt and dust where people throw away their garbage. That is where they found Spencer. He was lying face down in a thick layer of dirt, completely naked, no clothing in sight, his belongings gone. The responding officers from the local police department roll up to the scene. They take one look at a naked dead man in an area known for transient activity, and they make a snap judgment. They look at the scene and decide this is just another drug addict who overdosed and stripped his clothes off in a drug-induced fever. Case closed. Move along. You have to be kidding me. I tell you, there is no greater sin in law enforcement than looking at a human body and deciding their life is not worth your time. They did not rope off the crime scene. They did not launch a search grid for his clothing. A crime scene unit then drove back there, took one look, and drove away without doing a thorough collection. They assumed they had all the answers before they even asked a single question. 5 agonizing days passed before his mother, Kelly, is allowed to know anything definitive. They refuse to let her see him. They claim the body is in an advanced state of decomposition. Instead, they show her a photograph of Tattoo. It is him. It is her firstborn son. The authorities tell Kelly not to worry. They tell her the toxicology results will confirm their theory of an overdose. But Kelly knows her son. She knew his struggles with alcohol, but she knew he did not touch hard drugs. Then comes the medical examiner, a man whose credentials consist of a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice and a minor in agricultural business. No medical training. My. The coroner looks at this young man, found completely naked behind a dumpster, miles from his home, and decides an autopsy is not necessary. They draw some blood for toxicology, rule the death as natural causes, and release the body. By the time the toxicology report comes back nearly 2 months later, Spencer has been cremated. The evidence is literally turned to ash. And what did that report say? A blood alcohol level of 0.03. A trace amount of non-lethal prescription medication. No methamphetamine. No illicit narcotics. No overdose. The official cause of death is listed as a probable sudden cardiac death from chronic alcohol use. A 30-year-old man supposedly walked 4 miles from his home, stripped perfectly naked behind a dumpster, and dropped dead of a heart attack? That logic defies gravity. When the people wearing the badges refuse to do their jobs, a mother will do it for them. Hell hath no fury like a mother seeking justice for a child. Kelly Irwin becomes the lead detective on her son's case. She hits the pavement. She knocks on doors. She pulls security footage. She does a hard, unglamorous work of tracking a ghost. And what she uncovers paints a deeply disturbing picture of the days leading up to Spencer's death. Let us trace his final steps. Late July, Spencer wants to get clean. He has arranged to check into a rehabilitation center on July 29th. 2 days before that, on Saturday, he tries to walk to a cell phone store to fix his phone. The store is closed. He walks back. The next morning, Sunday, July 28th, shortly after 8 in the morning, Spencer leaves his apartment again. He is wearing jeans, a white shirt, a black hat, and carrying a black backpack. He tells his mother he is going to walk before it gets too hot. He steps out into the morning sun, and he vanishes off the face of the earth. To understand what happened to him, you have to look at the predators circling his life. Spencer lived in a complex designed for students transitioning out of homelessness. Because of his kind heart, he had recently taken in a man named Angel Gonzalez. They met at a detox center a few weeks prior. Angel was unhoused. So Spencer let him sleep in his apartment while they both waited for spots in the rehabilitation program. Then there is a neighbor, a man who goes by the street name Happy. His real name is Tyler. 2 weeks before Spencer disappeared, his apartment was burglarized. His computer and his gaming console were stolen. Spencer told his mother he suspected Tyler, because Tyler was one of the few people who knew his electronic door code. Did Spencer call the police? No, he tried to handle it himself. That is a fatal error. You do not negotiate with snakes. You step on them. Shortly after the burglary, Tyler posted a computer matching the exact specifications of Spencer's stolen machine for sale on the internet. Now, let us look at the psychology of these parasites. Men like Angel and Tyler operate on a baseline of pure survival and opportunism. They do not experience empathy the way normal people do. They view kindness as a weakness to be exploited. Spencer brought them into his world to help them, and they looked at him not as a savior, but as a resource, a mark, a weak animal separated from the herd. On July 31st, 3 days after Spencer vanished, Kelly asked the landlord to check the apartment. The landlord enters a code and finds Angel hiding in the bathroom. Angel claims he is Spencer's cousin, a blatant lie. Angel is supposed to be in rehabilitation, but instead, he is squatting in a dead man's apartment. Later, Spencer's girlfriend sees a new social media profile suggested to her. The username is Smiley, followed by 6 numbers. Those numbers perfectly match Angel's date of birth. Smiley and happy. 2 vultures sitting on the branches, waiting for the young man to fall. Kelly keeps digging. She finds security footage from a business next to that loading dock. It is July 29th, 10 at night. A white Kia Soul pulls up to the open security gate. As it drives onto property, the headlights are turned off. It rolls into darkness toward the loading dock. It stays off camera for less than 15 minutes, then drives out the exact same way. Moments later, a solitary figure is seen walking away in the shadows. You do not drive behind an empty business in the dead of night with your headlights off unless you are committing a crime or hiding the evidence of one. That car was a hearse. Then come the crime scene photographs. The police release them to Kelly, perhaps assuming she would not know what she was looking at. But we brought in a board-certified forensic pathologist. The pictures tell a story that the police ignored. Spencer is face down in the dirt. The police claimed the symmetrical markings in the dust around his upper body were from him flailing in a drug-induced stupor. The forensic expert disagreed. Those marks were far too symmetrical. They were made by a heavy object being dragged or something else entirely. But the most damning evidence is on his neck. When they roll the body over, there's a distinct, dark, horizontal line running straight across his throat, just under the jawline, a ligature mark. Someone put a cord, a wire, or a belt around that young man's neck and squeezed the life out of him. Let us put the pieces together. Spencer knew Tyler stole his property. Perhaps Spencer threatened to expose him. Or perhaps Angel, realizing he had a comfortable apartment to live in, decided that Spencer returning from rehabilitation would ruin his setup. These killers are cowards. They did not face him in a fair fight. There was no bruising on his knuckles. They ambushed him. They strangled him. Then comes the most degrading part of their crime. They stripped him completely naked. This is an old, callous trick used by street criminals. You remove the clothing to remove the identification. You take the wallet, the phone, the shirt off his back. You toss him in the dirt behind a dumpster, like a piece of refuse, hoping he becomes just another anonymous face in the morgue. It is an act of supreme arrogance. They believe they were smarter than the system. They believed the police would look at the neighborhood, look at a naked body, and simply turn the page. And for a long time, they were right. The apathy of the initial investigators played right into the hands of killers. But they made one monumental miscalculation. They forgot about the mother. They forgot that a mother's love does not decompose. It does not wash away in the rain. Kelly Irwin has hunted them with the relentless precision of a bloodhound. Now, there's a new detective on the case. Warrants are being drawn up. Phone records are being subpoenaed. The walls are slowly closing in on the white Kia Soul, on Angel, on Tyler, on whoever stood in the dark that night. To the individuals who put their hands around Spencer Irwin's throat, I have a message for you. You thought you were clever driving in the dark without your headlights. You thought stripping him of his clothes would strip him of his identity. But the truth is a stubborn thing. It refuses to stay buried in the dirt. It crawls its way out. It follows you. It watches you while you sleep. And very soon, it is going to knock on your door. And I promise you it will not be polite. Hopeful that her spiritual interventions would turn their business around and bring back the success they had once enjoyed. But a year later, instead of prosperity, a dark shadow had fallen over the family. As detectives began their meticulous investigation into the deaths of Long and Hong, they examined the apartment for any physical clues. On the coffee table, they found crushed prescription pills and a marijuana cigarette. More notably, they discovered a beer bottle wrapped in a light blue bandana. To the detectives, the blue bandana initially looked like a deliberate calling card left by one of the active local youth gangs known to operate in the area. These groups were sometimes known to extort local businesses. However, the seasoned homicide investigators remain skeptical. Most local gang activities did not involve this level of extreme, targeted violence against elderly citizens. The scene almost felt too perfect, as if someone had deliberately staged it to direct suspicion away from the true perpetrators and toward local street gangs. The detectives gathered forensic evidence with great care. They collected hair fibers, DNA swabs from the blood patterns, and fingerprinted the duct tape. They also sent the marijuana cigarette to the forensic laboratory to extract any potential DNA. Profiles. To understand the full scope of the victims' lives, investigators interviewed the family members. Chow Tran, acting as the primary spokesperson, explained that on the night before the discovery, the entire family had been celebrating his father-in-law's birthday at a lively party. According to Chow, the elderly couple had a wonderful time, staying until 10 o'clock and 30 minutes in the evening before receiving a ride home from another relative. That was the last time they were seen alive. When asked about financial matters, Chow mentioned that the family's sewing business had been struggling significantly, though they did not keep large amounts of cash at the home. He painted a picture of a sweet, generous couple who had spent their final years trying to keep their family business afloat. An autopsy conducted on June 11, 2012, revealed a tragic truth. While the victims had suffered blunt force trauma to their heads from an unknown object, the actual cause of death was suffocation due to extensive layers of duct tape wrapped tightly around their faces. This revelation reinforced the detectives' belief that the primary intent of the perpetrators was to ensure the victims did not survive, suggesting a highly targeted and deliberate plan rather than a simple robbery gone wrong. As the investigation continued, detectives received a routine but significant notification from a life insurance company. It revealed that there was a substantial life insurance policy on the couple, totaling at least $1 million, and one of the primary beneficiaries was Chow Tran himself. On June 13, 2012, detectives met with Chow at the Arlington Police Station to discuss the business operations and the insurance policy. Chow explained that because the commercial sewing business was registered in his in-laws' names, the insurance policies were put in place to ensure the family could continue running the business and support the grandchildren if any tragedy were to occur. When questioned about his whereabouts on the night of the incident, Chow and the other family members provided consistent alibis, explaining that they had remained at the birthday gathering and played cards until late into the night. The police collected DNA samples and fingerprints from Chow and other close relatives to compare against the evidence collected from the crime scene. While the laboratory successfully developed a clear DNA profile from saliva on the recovered marijuana cigarette, the profile did not match any of the family members. Furthermore, when run through the National DNA Database known as CODIS, there were no matching profiles found. This development was a significant setback for the investigation. It suggested that the person who left the DNA might not have had a previous felony conviction, or perhaps they were a minor whose genetic profile had not yet been entered into the system. For more than 2 years, despite interviewing over 50 people and checking every available lead, the case grew quiet, remaining unresolved but never forgotten by the dedicated detectives. The breakthrough came unexpectedly in the year 2015. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested in Houston for a felony offense involving the theft of a horse. Because a felony conviction in the state of Texas requires the submission of a DNA sample to the CODIS database, Willie's profile was officially entered into the system. Almost immediately, the system identified a perfect match between Willie Guillory's DNA and the genetic material recovered from a marijuana cigarette left at the Arlington crime scene 3 years prior. At the time of the murders in 2012, Willie had been only 16 years old, which explained why his profile had not been in the national database. Armed with his critical match, detectives brought Willie in for questioning. When confronted with the scientific evidence placing him inside the apartment, the young man became emotional and confessed to his involvement. However, he insisted that he had not acted alone. He explained that in 2012, he had been living with his uncle, a 49-year-old man named Bobby Guillory. According to Willie, his uncle had told him that they were going to travel to Arlington to perform a job, and Willie felt he had no choice but to accompany him. Willie detailed how they had traveled from Houston to Arlington on June 9th, 2012. He claimed that his uncle possessed a key to the apartment, which allowed them to enter without forcing the door. Their instructions were to intentionally throw items around and stage the scene to make it look like a local gang had committed a robbery. Willie admitted to smoking a small portion of a marijuana cigarette and leaving it behind as part of the staging process. Willie described how, when the elderly couple returned home, he had tried to prevent Hong Lee from escaping or making noise, while his uncle, Bobby, confronted and incapacitated Long Nguyen. Afterward, they used duct tape to bind the couple and move them into the bedroom closet before leaving the scene and returning to Houston. When detectives asked why they had targeted the specific couple, Willie revealed a crucial piece of the puzzle. He stated that the entire act was a murder-for-hire plot organized by a prominent acquaintance of his uncle named Daphne Wright, the very spiritual advisor Chow Tran, and Hong Lee had hired years earlier. Willie claimed that Daphne had given his uncle the key to the apartment and had ordered the act because the family owed her a substantial amount of money. With this astonishing information, the police formally charged Willie Guillory and began their search for Bobby Guillory and a deeper understanding of Daphne Wright. Detectives discovered that Daphne operated a highly successful spiritual consulting practice in Houston. She was a married mother of 3 daughters and was described as a strong, direct, and commanding figure who managed her household and her business with an iron hand. When investigators initially visited her home, she confirmed that she knew Chow Tran as a client, but declined to provide specific details regarding their financial transactions. When asked what occurred when clients failed to pay for her services, she confidently asserted that her clients always paid. On December 16, 2015, detectives traveled to Katy, Texas, to arrest 52-year-old Bobby Guillory. Bobby had no prior criminal record and had recently fallen on hard times after being laid off from his job. Confronted with the evidence and his nephew's confession, Bobby agreed to speak with the investigators. Bobby expressed deep remorse and fear during his interview. He claimed that Daphne Wright had taken advantage of his financial desperation, offering him $10,000 to carry out the deed. He explained that Daphne functioned like a spiritual lender, charging immense fees to her clients on credit. Over the course of her consultations with Chow Tran and Hong Lee, their unpaid balance had reportedly escalated to a sum between $250,000 and $280,000. According to Bobby, when the family was unable to pay the ballooning debt, Daphne discovered that there were major life insurance policies active on the couple. She allegedly proposed that by ending their lives, the family could collect on the insurance policies and finally settle their outstanding debts with her. When detectives asked Bobby how Daphne had obtained the key to the apartment, Bobby claimed that Daphne had received it directly from Chow Tran. This allegation of internal involvement deeply surprised the detectives, who had built a supportive relationship with Chow and his family over the years of the investigation. Following Bobby's arrest, detectives obtained a search warrant for Daphne's Houston home. During the search, they uncovered detailed financial ledgers. These documents revealed that Daphne charged clients tens of thousands of dollars for various spiritual services, including the removal and application of curses. Daphne was subsequently arrested and charged. Her husband, Howard, cooperated fully with the police, maintaining that he had no knowledge of any criminal activity and believed in his wife's complete innocence. Daphne herself declined to make any statements without her legal counsel present. To strengthen their case against the primary organizers of the crime, prosecutors subpoenaed Chow Tran's financial records. They discovered that following the passing of his in-laws, the commercial sewing business had closed, and Chow had purchased a new home. Facing potential charges, Chow and his attorney negotiated a structured agreement with the prosecution. Chow provided his perspective on the events, describing how he and his mother-in-law had become deeply fearful of Daphne. He explained that because they believed in Daphne's spiritual capabilities, they feared she could place a devastating curse on their family if they failed to pay her. Chow claimed that in a desperate bid to protect the family from spiritual harm, his mother-in-law, Hong Li, had suggested sacrificing her own life so the family could collect the insurance money to satisfy the debt. He claimed Daphne embraced the idea and insisted that both elderly parents must pass away so that the payouts from both policies would fully cover the outstanding balance. Following the tragedy, Chow admitted to paying Daphne a significant amount of cash from the insurance proceeds. He also admitted to leaving the apartment key under an outdoor mat, knowing that Daphne would retrieve it. While investigators found the claim that Hong Li had volunteered for such a fate highly improbable, the prosecution recognized that Chow's testimony was essential to securing a conviction against Daphne Wright, whom they viewed as the central organizer of the entire plot. In exchange for his full and truthful testimony at trial, Chow was offered immunity from prosecution. On August 26, 2019, the trial of Daphne Wright commenced. Chow Tran took the stand as the key witness for the state, portraying Daphne as an exceptionally greedy individual who would stop at nothing to secure her payment. The defense counsel vigorously challenged Chow's credibility, arguing that there was no written documentation or digital footprint of a $280,000 debt. They suggested that Chow had acted out of personal financial self-interest to secure the insurance money for himself, pointing out that he had received complete immunity despite his admitted involvement in coordinating the keys. In September of 2019, after careful deliberation, the jury reached its verdict. Daphne Wright was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced justice for their respective roles in the tragedy. For the investigators who had spent years dedicated to bringing resolve to the family of Long Nguyen and Hong Li, the conclusion of the legal proceedings brought a mixture of peace and reflection. While some aspects of the resolution remained complex, the truth had ultimately been brought to light through diligent police work, scientific advancement, and an unwavering commitment to justice for two beloved members of the community. The memory of Long and Hong remained cherished by those who knew them, serving as a reminder of the enduring strength of family bonds and the ultimate triumph of truth over darkness. The story of the Nguyen family begins not in the sprawling, sun-drenched suburbs of North Texas, but across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. In the year 2000, Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu, made the monumental decision to leave their familiar life in Vietnam. They were not merely moving to a new country. They were carrying with them a treasure trove of time-honored traditions, an unwavering work ethic, and a deep, abiding love for their 3 children and grandchildren. For many decades, the city of Arlington, Texas, had been a beacon of hope for Vietnamese immigrants, settling into the heart of Tarrant County. Over the years, they established a vibrant, closely knit community. They built businesses, temples, churches, and neighborhoods where the sweet aroma of traditional spices mingled seamlessly with the warm breeze of the Lone Star State. Long and Hong chose the city carefully, studying its geography and recognizing it as a fertile ground where their children could receive a grand education and their grandchildren could grow up with endless opportunities. To establish their footing in this new land, Long and Hong founded a commercial sewing business. It was a true family endeavor, while the elderly couple managed the intricate craftsmanship of the garments. They relied heavily on their 38-year-old son-in-law, Chow Tran. Chow spoke fluent English, possessing a charismatic charm that made him the perfect public face for the business. He negotiated with major contractors, managed client relationships, and handled the daily operations of their workshop. For nearly a decade, their hard work bore abundant fruit. The family secured prestigious contracts with commercial giants, including the world-renowned Disney Corporation. Their spacious workshop hummed with the steady, comforting rhythm of sewing machines, a symphony of progress that symbolized their realization of the American dream. They were a prominent, highly respected family in the local Asian community, known for their sweet dispositions, generosity, and willingness to help anyone in need. The shadow of misfortune. However, the path to prosperity is rarely a straight line. By the year 2011, the family's steady stream of good fortune began to falter. A shifting global economy and intense competition led to the loss of their lucrative contract with Disney. The once bustling sewing workshop grew quiet, and the financial pressure began to weigh heavily on the household. In traditional Vietnamese culture, when a family encounters a sudden barrage of obstacles, it is not uncommon to seek spiritual guidance. For thousands of years, people have believed in the protective power of ancestral blessings and spiritual alignment. When faced with the threat of bankruptcy or emotional distress, many families turn to a spiritual advisor to perform traditional rituals designed to ward off negativity and restore balance. Hoping to find a solution, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, began searching through the local Vietnamese newspapers. Within the classified sections, they discovered an advertisement for a spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright, who operated out of Houston, located approximately 250 miles away. The advertisement promised that she possessed a unique ability to lift heavy curses, bestow good fortune, and protect businesses from financial ruin. Encouraged by Hong, Chow made contact with Daphne and arranged a formal consultation at her residence in Houston. The family was filled with a sense of hope. They believed that with the right spiritual guidance, they could revitalize their sewing business and protect their family legacy. Daphne agreed to perform a series of elaborate rituals, promising that prosperity would soon return to their doorstep. An unexpected discovery. A year passed, but the financial recovery they had prayed for remained elusive. Instead of a returned prosperity, a quiet tension settled over the family. On the 10th of June, 2012, at exactly 7:29 in the morning, the peace of a quiet Arlington neighborhood was broken when emergency dispatchers received an urgent call from Chow Tran. He requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, explaining that his family had gathered outside their apartment and felt a deep, instinctual worry that something was wrong. Officer Weller, a dedicated officer with 14 years of experience on the force, was the first to arrive at the apartment complex. At first glance, the scene did not resemble a typical welfare check. The entire extended family was standing outside the residence in the early morning air, looking visibly shaken and too terrified to step inside. They pointed out that a window to the apartment was slightly open, which was highly unusual for the elderly couple. Upon entering the apartment, Officer Weller immediately noticed that the living room was in complete disarray, displaying the classic signs of a sudden intrusion. The furniture was shifted, and personal belongings were scattered across the floor. Calling out to the residents, the officer received no reply. After checking the living room, kitchen, and bathroom, only the master bedroom remained. Inside the bedroom, the room appeared quiet. Officer Weller turned to leave, but as a flashlight beam swept across the wall near a small closet, the officer noticed faint hand smudges next to the door. Pausing, guided by professional duty to leave no stone unturned, the officer gently opened the closet door. Inside, the elderly couple was found. They were completely unresponsive, bound securely with heavy duct tape. Recognizing that they were beyond medical help, Officer Weller stepped back into the living room, calmed the initial shock, and immediately contacted the dispatch center to request a supervisor in the Specialized Homicide Unit. The investigation begins. Within the hour, the veteran detectives of the Arlington Police Department arrived at the scene. Among them was a seasoned homicide investigator with 21 years of experience, who recognized that this was one of the most complex and sensitive cases the department had faced. At first, the physical evidence suggested a robbery that had escalated into violence. On the living room coffee table, investigators discovered a plate with crushed prescription medication and a partially consumed, hand-rolled cigarette. More intriguingly, a light blue bandana was found wrapped around a glass bottle. To the detectives, this appeared to be a deliberate signature, potentially associated with local youth groups or street gangs known to operate in the wider region. The investigators immediately consulted with the department's Specialized Gang Intelligence Unit to analyze the significance of the blue bandana. However, as the initial processing of the scene progressed, the experienced detectives began to feel a sense of skepticism. The scene appeared almost too orchestrated, as if someone had deliberately left behind classic stereotypes of criminal activity to redirect the focus of the police. To gather more context, the detectives conducted an initial interview with Chow Tran, who acted as the primary spokesperson for the family due to his strong command of the English language. Chow explained that the entire family had spent the previous evening celebrating his father-in-law's birthday. The elderly couple had enjoyed a wonderful evening, staying at the family gathering until approximately 10:30 in the evening, when another relative drove them safely back to their apartment. When asked about potential valuables in the home, Chow mentioned that while some members of the older generation preferred to keep their savings close at hand rather than utilizing modern banking institutions, the sewing business had been struggling significantly, and there was very little money kept in the residence. He emphasized that Long and Hong were incredibly sweet, gentle, and hard-working individuals who had no known enemies in the community. Technical analysis and a sudden turn. On the 11th of June, 2012, the medical examiner conducted a thorough examination to determine the precise cause of the couple's passing. The findings revealed that the primary cause of death was oxygen deprivation resulting from the extensive layers of duct tape applied to their faces. The sheer intent required to perform such an act convinced investigators that this was not a simple burglary gone wrong. It was a targeted, deeply personal offense. While detectives continued to explore the gang theory, they received an unexpected telephone call from a national life insurance provider. The representative informed Detective Stewart that the deceased couple carried a highly substantial life insurance policy valued at approximately $1 million. When a detective inquired about the named beneficiaries of this policy, the company confirmed that Chow Tran was designated to receive a major portion of the funds. On the 13th of June, 2012, detectives invited Chow back to the police station to discuss the business operations and the existence of the insurance policies. Chow was highly cooperative, explaining that because the commercial sewing business was registered under his in-laws' names, the insurance policies were established to ensure the family could continue operating the business and support the grandchildren if either elder were to pass away. He provided a detailed timeline of his whereabouts on the night of the incident, which was fully supported by the rest of the family members who had been playing cards together until late into the night. The police department collected genetic profiles and fingerprint samples from Chow and all family members, comparing them directly to the evidence recovered from the apartment, including the hand-rolled cigarette found on the coffee table. When the laboratory results returned, the genetic material did not match Chow, any family member, or any existing profile within the National Combined Deoxyribonucleic Acid Index System. For 2 long years, the investigation continued with dedication, but without a matching genetic profile in the national database, the leads began to dry up. The case grew quiet, But the detectives refused to let the memory of the sweet elderly couple fade away. The breakthrough in 2015. The turning point in the case arrived unexpectedly in the autumn of 2015. A young man named Willie Guillory, who was 16 years old at the time of the original incident in 2012, was arrested for a felony offense involving the theft of a horse near Houston, Texas. Because he had transitioned into adulthood and was convicted of a felony, his genetic profile was officially entered into the national database for the first time. Within weeks, the system generated an automatic alert. The genetic profile from Willie Guillory was a perfect match for the genetic material recovered from the hand-rolled cigarette left on the coffee table inside the Arlington apartment 3 years earlier. On the 17th of October, 2015, investigators brought Willie Guillory in for questioning. Initially, Willie denied any knowledge of the city of Arlington, suggesting that perhaps his genetic material had been misplaced. However, as the detectives presented the indisputable scientific evidence, the young man became visibly emotional and confessed his involvement, revealing that he had not acted alone. Willie explained that in the summer of 2012, his 49-year-old uncle, Bobby Guillory, had asked him to assist with a task in Arlington. On the 9th of June, 2012, the uncle and nephew made the 3-hour drive from Houston. Willie claimed that Bobby possessed an actual key to the elderly couple's apartment, which allowed them to enter without forcing the door. According to Willie, the plan was to systematically disarrange the apartment to create the appearance of a random burglary. They brought specific items, including the glass bottle, the blue bandana, and a hand-rolled cigarette, to intentionally mislead investigators into believing that a local street gang was responsible. When the elderly couple returned home, a physical altercation ensued, during which Bobby utilized a blunt object to quiet the resistance, after which they secured the couple inside the closet and departed back to Houston, unraveling the mastermind. When asked why they had targeted a gentle elderly couple whom they had never met, Willie revealed a startling detail. He explained that the entire plan was a murder-for-hire plot orchestrated by a woman named Daphne Wright, who was a close associate of his Uncle Bobby. Willie stated that Daphne claimed the family owed her an enormous sum of money and that she wanted the debt settled permanently. With this crucial information, the focus of the investigation shifted directly to Daphne Wright. Detectives discovered that she was a popular spiritual advisor based in Houston, married with 3 daughters, and considered the dominant force within her household. On the 16th of December, 2015, detectives traveled to Katy, Texas, to apprehend 52-year-old Bobby Guillory. Confronted with a search warrant for his genetic profile and confession of his nephew, Bobby broke down and admitted his role in the events. He expressed deep remorse, explaining that in 2011, he had been laid off from his job and was facing severe financial hardship. Desperate to avoid homelessness, he agreed to Daphne's proposal when she offered him a payment of $10,000 to carry out the deed. Bobby provided investigators with a deeper understanding of the financial dynamics at play. He explained that Chow Tran and Hong Lu had become deeply dependent on Daphne's spiritual services. Over the course of a year, as their business struggled, they continued to request rituals on credit, eventually accumulating a massive debt of between $250,000 and $280,000. Recognizing that the family could not pay this enormous sum, Daphne learned of the substantial life insurance policies. According to Bobby, Daphne conceived a plan to collect on the policies to satisfy the debt. When Bobby asked how she had obtained the key to the apartment, Daphne revealed that she had received it directly from Chow Tran. The path to justice. On the 31st of August, 2016, detectives executed a search warrant at Daphne Wright's residence in Houston, resulting in her arrest. Inside the home, investigators discovered detailed financial ledgers, These documents revealed that Daphne had been charging clients astronomical fees, ranging from $10,000 to $40,000 for individual spiritual services and rituals. To build an airtight case against the primary coordinator, prosecutors entered into formal discussions with Chow Tran and his legal representative. Chow provided a detailed account of the immense psychological pressure the family experienced. He explained that they genuinely believed in Daphne's spiritual authority, fearing that if they failed to pay her, she would place a devastating curse upon their children and grandchildren. Chow claimed that his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, out of profound and selfless love for her family, had suggested sacrificing her own well-being so the family could collect the insurance funds to pay the debt and lift the spiritual burden. However, investigators and prosecutors remained highly skeptical of this narrative, believing that the plan was fueled by financial desperation and manipulation. Ultimately, to ensure that the individual who organized and financed the crime was held fully accountable, the state offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for a complete and truthful testimony during the trial. The formal trial of Daphne Wright commenced on the 26th of August, 2019. Chow Tran took the stand, describing Daphne as an incredibly greedy and controlling individual who would stop at nothing to secure her financial demands. Although the defense argued that Chow was a primary participant who benefited financially from the insurance proceeds, the jury carefully weighed the extensive physical evidence, the testimonies of Willie and Bobby Guillory, and the financial ledgers. In September 2019, the jury returned a verdict of guilty for capital murder. Daphne Wright was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that she could no longer exploit vulnerable families. Bobby and Willie Guillory were likewise held legally accountable for their respective roles in the tragedy, a legacy of resilience and community. While the legal proceedings brought a sense of closure to the city of Arlington, the true heart of this story lies in the resilience of the local community and the enduring bond of family. The tragedy served as a profound educational lesson for many immigrant families, highlighting the importance of seeking legitimate financial counseling, relying on established community support systems, and protecting loved ones from manipulative influences. The Vietnamese community of Arlington rallied around the remaining members of the family, offering comfort, spiritual healing, and solidarity. Neighbors and business owners came together to honor the memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu, remembering them not for the quiet tragedy of their final days, but for their decade of warmth, their beautiful craftsmanship, and the immense love they poured into building a bright future for their descendants. The story stands as an inspiring testament to the dedicated detectives who spent years pursuing the truth, refusing to let a cold case remain unsolved. It reminds us that even when faced with the absolute darkest aspects of human greed, the light of truth, the strength of community, and the warmth of familial love will always prevail, guiding us toward a peaceful and just tomorrow. The morning sun over Arlington, Texas, always had a way of painting the suburban landscape in shades of warm amber and soft gold. It was a city of quiet intersections, bustling strip malls, and a vibrant tapestry of cultures that had woven themselves into the very soil of Tarrant County. Over the decades, among these, the Vietnamese community stood as a beacon of resilience and entrepreneurial spirit, having established deep roots since the late 1970s. They brought with them not just their dreams, but their heritage, their culinary secrets, and an unwavering devotion to family. Detective Stewart, a man with 21 years of service in the homicide division, appreciated the quiet mornings. He was a veteran who had seen the city grow, change, and sometimes stumble. Yet, he maintained a gentle, almost whimsical sense of humor about the daily quirks of police work, often sharing a laugh over lukewarm coffee with his colleagues. To him, the badge was not just a symbol of authority, but a commitment to keeping the peace in a community he deeply loved. On the morning of June 10, 2012, At exactly 7:29 in the morning, the peace of a quiet Sunday was gently interrupted. An emergency call came through to the dispatchers. The caller was 38-year-old Chow Tran, a Vietnamese immigrant who spoke with a hurried, anxious tone. He was requesting a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. An unexpected Sunday call. Chow Tran explained to the dispatcher that his father-in-law, who was in his early 70s, and his mother-in-law had not been answering their phone. The concern in his voice was palpable, a natural reaction for a family that was closely knit. He mentioned that his wife and teenage son had gone to the apartment to knock on the door, but the silence from within was deafening. They had noticed an open window, and the blinds were slightly askew, which was highly unusual for the meticulous elderly couple. Officer Weller, a dedicated officer with 14 years of experience, was the first to arrive at the scene. He was a cheerful man who prided himself on his approachable nature, always ready with a smile for the neighborhood kids. But as he pulled up to the apartment complex, he noticed the entire family standing outside, their faces clouded with worry. It was far too early in the morning for a typical welfare check, and the sheer number of gathered relatives suggested that something was amiss. Upon entering the residence, the atmosphere shifted. The apartment was in a state of disarray, suggesting that a burglary might have taken place. Officer Weller called out, his voice echoing through the quiet rooms. "Arlington Police, is anyone home?" There was no answer. He systematically checked the living room, the small kitchen, and the bathroom. Everything seemed empty, yet the lingering feeling of disorder remained. He turned his attention to the master bedroom. Initially, nothing caught his eye. He was about to turn around, thinking perhaps the couple had simply gone for an early morning walk to enjoy the cool Texas air, when his flashlight illuminated the wall next to a small closet. The discovery in the closet. There, on the painted wall, were faint hand smudges. It was a small detail, but one that a seasoned officer could not ignore. A quiet instinct told him to proceed with caution. He reached out and slowly opened the closet door. Inside, the reality of the situation became clear. Long Nguyen and Hong Lee were there, bound with silver duct tape around their wrists and ankles. Their heads and mouths were covered in layers of the same heavy tape. They were motionless. In that split second, Officer Weller realized they had passed away. The scene was incredibly solemn, a stark contrast to the bright Sunday morning, waiting just beyond the threshold. Weller stepped back into the living room, taking a moment to steady his breathing. He picked up his radio and requested a supervisor and the crime scene unit. When Detective Stewart arrived, he felt profound sadness for the sweet, elderly couple who were known by everyone in the neighborhood as kind, generous, and hardworking. They had moved to the United States in the year 2000, seeking the American dream, establishing a commercial sewing business that once produced garments for major brands like Disney. They had no known enemies. Unraveling the clues. As the crime scene investigators meticulously processed the apartment, they discovered several unusual items that seemed out of place for a simple burglary. On the coffee table sat a plate with crushed prescription pills, and nearby was a partially smoked marijuana cigarette. Most puzzling of all was a light blue bandana wrapped neatly around a beer bottle, left on the kitchen counter like a calling card. Detective Stewart consulted with the gang unit, knowing that some local youth gangs use blue bandanas as their signature color. "It almost looks too perfect," Stewart remarked, scratching his chin as he looked at the bottle. "Like someone wanted us to find this exact clue." Indeed, the scene felt staged. While a gang-related robbery was a viable theory, the level of targeted restraint used on the victims suggested a deeply personal motive rather than a random crime. To gain more insight, Stewart interviewed Chow Tran, the son-in-law who acted as the primary spokesperson for the family due to his fluent English. Chow explained that the family had gathered the previous evening to celebrate his father-in-law's birthday. The elderly couple had enjoyed themselves immensely. leaving the party around 10:30 in the evening to return home. Chow also revealed that while the sewing business had once been lucrative, they had recently lost their major contracts, and the business was struggling. They believed a streak of bad luck had cursed their endeavors. To counter this, Chow and his mother-in-law had sought the services of a spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright, who lived in Houston, some 250 miles away. The shadow of the spiritual advisor. In many traditional cultures, seeking the guidance of a spiritual advisor during times of financial distress or personal turmoil was a common practice. Daphne Wright advertised her ability to remove bad luck and lift curses, promising to restore prosperity to those who believed in her mystical practices. Chow and Hong Lee had visited Daphne in Houston, participating in rituals that left them feeling hopeful. However, the business did not recover. Instead, the family found themselves sinking deeper into debt. Bobby Guillory, an acquaintance of Daphne, later revealed that the debt had ballooned to an astronomical amount, somewhere between $250,000 and $280,000. Daphne, it turned out, operated more like a financial lender than a spiritual healer, and she was determined to collect what she believed was owed to her. As the investigation progressed into 2015, the case had grown cold, leaving the detectives frustrated but determined. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested for a horse theft felony, which required his DNA to be entered into the national database. His profile matched the DNA found on the marijuana cigarette left at the staged crime scene. A web of deception and redemption. When questioned, 16-year-old Willie broke down and confessed. He revealed that his uncle, Bobby Guillory, had recruited him for a job in Arlington under the direction of Daphne Wright. They had been given a key to the apartment to make the entry look effortless, staging the burglary with a bandana and pills to mislead the police. Bobby Guillory was soon arrested and confessed as well, pointing the finger directly at Daphne as the mastermind who had promised him $10,000 for the deed. He explained that Daphne had discovered the elderly couple held substantial life insurance policies, totaling at least $1 million, with Chow Tran named as a beneficiary. The revelation of Chow Tran's potential involvement shocked the investigators. Chow had initially presented himself as a grieving relative, but financial records showed he had recently purchased a new home after receiving the insurance payout. When confronted, Chow, accompanied by his attorney, painted a picture of psychological manipulation. He claimed that Daphne held immense spiritual control over his mind and body, making him feel powerless to resist her demands. To secure a conviction against Daphne Wright, the prosecutors made a difficult decision to offer Chow Tran immunity in exchange for his full testimony. During the trial in August of 2019, Chow testified extensively about Daphne's greed and the immense pressure she placed on his family, depicting her as a modern-day mystical extortionist. Ultimately, the jury found Daphne Wright guilty of capital murder, sentencing her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While the resolution brought a sense of justice to the community, the investigators remained mindful of the complex human emotions, cultural pressures, and desperate choices that had led to such a tragedy. The story of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee served as a solemn reminder of the values of family, the dangers of misplaced trust, and the enduring pursuit of truth. The summer sun over the state of Texas has a way of turning the concrete of Arlington into a shimmering mirage, where the heat rises in visible waves and the air smells of sweet grass and dry earth. In the year 2000, a quiet family arrived in this bustling corner of the world, carrying with them nothing but a few suitcases, a profound sense of hope, and a treasury of ancient traditions from their homeland of Vietnam. Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu, were people who measured their wealth not in paper currency, but in the laughter of their grandchildren and the steady, rhythmic hum of sewing machines. For many years, their lives in the United States resembled a beautifully woven tapestry. They established a commercial garment business, renting a modest space where the bright fabrics of dreams were transformed into tangible realities. Long was a man of gentle patience, often seen with a measuring tape draped over his shoulders like a priestly stole, while Hong possessed an eye for detail that could spot a misaligned stitch from across a crowded room to help them navigate the unfamiliar waters of American commerce. They relied heavily on their son-in-law, Chow Tran, a young man of 38 years who possessed the gift of fluent English and a charming, easygoing demeanor that made contractors feel instantly at ease. Under Chow's management, the sewing business flourished. They secured prestigious contracts, including a highly lucrative agreement to manufacture garments for a global entertainment giant, bringing a sense of immense pride to the entire immigrant community. In the quiet evenings, the family would gather around a large wooden dining table in their apartment, sharing bowls of fragrant noodle soup and exchanging stories of their daily triumphs. They believed they had captured their own slice of the American dream, a gentle and honest prosperity built on a foundation of hard work and mutual respect. However, the tides of fortune are notoriously fickle. By the year 2011, the grand contract that had sustained their business came to an end, and a shadow of quiet worry began to settle over the household. The sewing machines, once singing with constant activity, now sat silent for hours at a time. Long and Hong, traditionalists at heart, began to wonder if some unseen spiritual disharmony had disrupted their lives. In their ancestral culture, when a family faced sudden adversity, it was common to seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor, someone who could harmonize the unseen energies of the world and restore the flow of good fortune. It was during a warm afternoon in the early months of 2011 that Chow Tran, while scanning the pages of a local Vietnamese newspaper, discovered an advertisement for a spiritual healer based in the city of Houston, some 250 miles away. The advertisement promised to lift curses, banish misfortune, and bring abundant luck to those in desperate need. Encouraged by his mother-in-law, who felt a deep, instinctive need to protect her family's legacy, Chow made contact with his mysterious advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright. The journey to Houston was filled with a mixture of anxiety and hope. Daphne Wright, a married mother of 3 daughters, operated her spiritual practice from her suburban home. She was a woman of powerful presence, loud, direct, and commanding, whose household seemed to revolve entirely around her formidable will. When Chow and Hong first met her, they were captivated by her absolute confidence. Daphne performed an elaborate ritual designed to cleanse their business of negative influences, promising that prosperity would soon return to their sewing tables. Yet, as the months passed, the business did not recover. Instead of questioning the efficacy of the rituals, Chow and Hong found themselves caught in a cycle of escalating dependence. Daphne explained that the negative forces surrounding their family were far deeper and more stubborn than she had initially realized, requiring increasingly complex and expensive ceremonies to dismantle. Driven by a profound fear of failure and a deep-seated belief in Daphne's purported spiritual authority, the family began to pay her vast sums of money, often relying on credit extended by the advisor herself. Over the course of a single year, the spiritual debt ballooned to an astronomical sum, somewhere between $250,000 and $280,000. The burden of this debt began to weigh heavily on the family, transforming their once happy home into a place of quiet tension. Unbeknownst to the gentle elders, Long and Hong, a dark plan was beginning to form in the shadows. Driven by greed and the cold calculations of those who saw human life as a mere transaction, on the morning of June 10th, 2012, the quiet peace of an Arlington apartment complex was shattered. At 7:29 in the morning, emergency dispatchers received a call from a distressed Chow Tran, requesting a welfare check on his elderly in-laws. Chow explained to the operator that his family had gathered outside the residence. Deeply concerned because the window of the apartment was open, and there was no response to their repeated knocks. A young patrol officer named Weller was the first to arrive on the scene. Sensing the family's intense anxiety, Weller entered the apartment, searching the rooms one by one. The living room was in complete disarray, presenting the classic signs of a burglary. Drawers were pulled open, compact discs were scattered across the carpet, and furniture was overturned. Weller called out, but his voice was met only with a heavy, suffocating silence. As Weller prepared to leave the bedroom, believing the apartment to be empty, his flashlight caught the faint, chilling sight of hand smudges on the wall next to a small closet. Summoning his courage, he opened the door, only to make a discovery that would haunt him for the rest of his career. There inside the confined space lay the silent forms of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. They had been bound with duct tape, their heads wrapped tightly in a cruel attempt to silence them forever. When the Arlington homicide detectives arrived, led by veterans with over 21 years of experience, they were deeply shaken by the sheer malice of the scene. On the coffee table in the living room, investigators found a plate of crushed prescription pills and a discarded marijuana cigarette. Most striking of all was a light blue bandana wrapped neatly around a beer bottle, left on the table like a deliberate calling card. To many, it seemed to be the unmistakable signature of a local Vietnamese street gang, perhaps a robbery that had escalated into tragedy. However, the experienced detective harbored a healthy skepticism. The crime scene felt almost too perfect, too staged, as if someone had meticulously arranged the items to tell a specific story. While forensic teams gather hair fibers, latent fingerprints, and swabs of biological evidence, detectives began the difficult task of interviewing the grieving family. Chow Tran, acting as the primary spokesperson due to his strong English skills, provided a detailed timeline. He explained that the entire family had been celebrating his father-in-law's birthday the previous evening, playing cards and sharing a joyous meal until past 10 o'clock at night. For more than 2 years, the investigation seemed to stall. The deoxyribonucleic acid profiles recovered from a marijuana cigarette did not match any entries in the Federal Bureau of Investigation's combined deoxyribonucleic acid index system, and no local gang members could be linked to the crime. The case grew cold, leaving the community to heal as best as it could, wrapping the memory of the gentle couple in a quiet, enduring respect. Then, in the autumn of 2015, a bizarre and unrelated event breathed new life into the investigation. A 19-year-old young man named Willie Guillory was arrested in Houston for felony offense of stealing a horse. Because Willie had been a minor of 16 years at the time of the murders in 2012, his profile had never been entered into the national database. Now, as an adult facing a felony charge, his genetic signature was uploaded into the system, producing an immediate and undeniable match to the marijuana cigarette left at the Arlington crime scene. When detectives brought Willie in for questioning, the young man quickly broke down. He confessed that he had traveled to Arlington in the company of his uncle, a 52-year-old man named Bobby Guillory, who was facing severe financial desperation. Bobby had been promised $10,000 by Daphne Wright to carry out a dark deed. Willie explained that Daphne had provided them with a key to the apartment, instructing them to stage a burglary and ensure that the elderly couple would never speak there. That's again. The final pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place with astonishing speed. Detectives traveled to Katy, Texas, to arrest Bobby Guillory, who confirmed his nephew's account, expressing deep remorse for his actions. Bobby revealed a shocking detail that blindsided the investigators. The key to the apartment had originally come from Chow Tran himself. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the full, tragic scope of the manipulation became clear. Chow Tran, terrified of Daphne's supposed spiritual curses and drowning in debt, had allowed himself to be guided by the advisor's cold machinations. Daphne, learning of a substantial life insurance policy worth over $1 million held by the family, had orchestrated the entire plot to ensure her payment, viewing the lives of the gentle elders as nothing more than an obstacle to her financial gain. Ultimately, justice was served. The perpetrators of the scheme were brought to answer for their actions, and the community was forced to confront the devastating consequences of greed and spiritual manipulation. Yet, in the wake of the tragedy, the memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Li remained a powerful testament to the enduring values of hard work, family unity, and the search for a better life. Their legacy was not defined by the darkness of their end, but by the warmth, love, and vibrant spirit they had brought from their ancestral home to the heart of Texas, leaving a lesson of resilience and the true meaning of family that would inspire generations to come. The golden sun rose gently over Arlington, Texas, on the 10th of June 2012. The air was warm and full of the promise of a peaceful Sunday. At 7:29 in the morning, the calm was interrupted by a phone call to the emergency dispatch center. A 38-year-old man named Chow Tran called, his voice carrying a nervous tremor. He asked the police to check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Li. They were in their 70s, a sweet and enduring couple who had built a beautiful life together. Officer Weller, a kind-hearted man with 14 years of experience in the police force, received the call. He drove through the quiet streets, expecting a simple misunderstanding. Perhaps the elderly couple had simply gone for a morning stroll and forgot to lock their door. When he arrived at the apartment complex, he noticed a family gathered outside. They looked worried, standing together in the soft morning light. The front window of the apartment was open, and the curtains danced in the gentle breeze. "I will go take a look," Officer Weller said with a reassuring smile. He wanted to bring peace to the anxious family. He stepped inside the home. The living room was untidy, which was unusual for a family known for their neatness. He called out their names, his voice echoing in the quiet spaces. The kitchen and the bathroom were empty. The only place left to check was the bedroom. He walked in, holding his flashlight, hoping to find Long and Hong safe and sound. Instead, he found a profound sadness. In the small closet, he discovered the beloved couple. They had passed away. To respect their dignity and the gentle nature of this tale, we will not dwell on the sorrowful details of how they were found. Officer Weller stood in the living room, his heart heavy. He had seen many things in his long career, but this moment touched his soul deeply. He calmly reached for his radio and called for his colleagues. The Arlington Homicide Team, led by seasoned and compassionate detectives, arrived shortly after. They looked at the scene and knew they had a significant puzzle to solve. They were determined to find the truth and bring justice to a family that had lost its guiding stars. Chapter 2, The American Dream. To understand the depth of this loss, one must understand the beautiful journey of Long Nguyen and Hong Li. They immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing with them a rich heritage, time-honored traditions, and an immense love for their family. They settled in Arlington, a vibrant city in Tarrant County known for its welcoming community and diverse cultures. Long and Hong were a prominent and beloved family. They were the kind of neighbors who always had a warm smile and a kind word for everyone. They were the roots of a deeply connected family tree. Upon arriving in Texas, they started a commercial sewing business. They worked tirelessly, their hands weaving not just fabric, but a future for their 3 children and their grandchildren. Their son-in-law, Chow, who spoke excellent English, helped them manage the business and communicate with clients. Their hard work blossomed into a magnificent American dream. They secured a wonderful contract to make garments for a massive entertainment company, bringing joy and stability to